We've got an extraordinary guest in the studio, so we're going to find out about him. But first, the goal of the country to be smoke-free by 2025 looks to be a pipe dream. As experts say, the country is not on track to meet that goal. A report by Action for Smoke-Free 2025 states the country needs a rapid change, which could come in the form of effective vaping policies. Professor David Sweanor is one of the report authors and is chair of the advisory board for the Centre of Health Law at the University of Ottawa. He's currently in New Zealand, where he joins us in the studio. David, it's so nice to have you here. Thank you for coming
here again.
And again is the operative word. So you go right back in terms of basically your opposition to smoking and to tobacco companies has been a singular driver in your life, and you have travelled the world spreading the word.
Well, I've worked on policy in this area since 1983. I've been involved here in New Zealand with groups like ASH since 1985. I think I've played a big role in setting a lot of precedents that have affected policy around the world, and it's always a matter of saying, how can we do something better? And we've done a whole lot about cigarettes without dealing with the product itself. And what we have when we start looking at alternatives is the ability to just rapidly get rid of cigarette smoking, the way we got rid of things like leaded petrol or unsafe automobiles or unsanitary food, to say, what are the regulations we need to facilitate people to make better, healthier decisions? And how rapidly could we get rid of cigarettes? In New Zealand, 5,000 deaths a year.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, isn't it? 5,000 deaths a year.
Yeah, and the big advantage I find with countries like yours and mine is that we can get policies through that are incredibly important in our own countries, but the global significance, because globally 20,000 people are going to die today from cigarette smoking. Every day, 20,000. So 4 times as many people die globally every day as die in New Zealand in a year.
I just want to interrupt there, and this is important. So the regulatory and legislative space around vaping in New Zealand is still vacant.
Yes.
And so what you're saying is get it right, and it could become a global precedent.
And just as New Zealand did early on the Smokefree Environments Act in 1990, in the work I was doing with the government here then on early days of tobacco taxation, New Zealand was the only country until recently of any developed country that reduced cigarette sales by over 10% 2 years in a row. We're now seeing that happen in countries that use substitution, bring forward alternatives for smokers. But that was precedent setting, and other countries pay attention. And New Zealand is fortunately one of those countries that the rest of the world will pay attention to, and has a history of doing rational policy, setting precedents on everything from votes to women to gay marriage to reducing cigarette smoking.
If there was no tobacco in the world, if there was no smoking, you wouldn't be advocating for vaping, right? But is it a case that the old saying, my enemy's enemy is my friend, that vaping is so much better than smoking, that if we can get people out of smoking by vaping, let's go for it?
Yeah, I mean, the Royal College of Physicians in the UK say that vaping is likely to be at least 95% less hazardous than smoking. We've got over 1 billion cigarette smokers in the world. They're not quitting. What more can we do? And it's just like any other thing, whether we're talking about reducing the risk for people who want to race motorcycles, or the people who are using drugs, people who are driving cars. We have a history of being able to say, wherever we find risk, let's reduce it. And we've been incredibly successful, which is why life expectancy has gone up so much in so many of our countries. Here's our leading cause of preventable death. The harm is almost entirely because of the delivery system. People are smoking to get nicotine, but they're dying because of inhaling smoke. So it'd be the same if people are getting their caffeine by smoking tea leaves rather than brewing tea. That would be causing the same diseases. What would we do? We teach people to brew tea. And here, what can we do? We can get people off combustion.
Okay, so to get people off combustion, what is it that you would like to suggest New Zealand does?
Well, when we're looking at regulation, the key thing is risk proportionate regulation. We've got a range of products with very different risk profiles. What can we do to give a relative advantage to the lower risk products? You want cigarettes.
Which is vaping. Vaping.
I mean, there's other products that are also in that category, but vaping is the big one now that people are seeing that, I can see walking around Auckland. I was into various vape shops talking to the people who are there. This is something that's working. We're seeing it in the UK with now over 3 million people who are vaping, over 2 million, or approximately 2 million who are now exclusive vapors. You move those people off cigarettes, that's phenomenal. The UK's had a really rational policy. We've seen other countries where we've reduced cigarette smoking very rapidly by giving people alternatives and giving them truthful information.
Okay, so that was a very good point you made before, and I just want to repeat it. So if people are addicted to nicotine, and people are, and the tobacco companies have worked to ensure they are,
right,
then we change the distribution system for the nicotine to a distribution system which is 95% less harmful.
Exactly. And that's, again, a start to say, now, where would the regulation take us eventually as you start creating the incentives for ever safer products, probably even less addictive products? What can we do? Why do we simply allow cigarette companies to sell cigarettes, not give people alternatives, not give them truthful information? And in many countries, including Australia, they say, we'll deal with this by banning the safer alternative. We'll make it hard for people to have an alternative to cigarettes. So we end up with policy that's actually protecting the cigarette cartel, protecting the profits of cigarette companies, rather than protecting public health.
I've got the rap from Naomi in my earpiece, but Naomi, I just want to ask two more questions.
Sure.
So very quickly, are you saying, because previously a ban on tobacco seemed a brutal and blunt
right,
attack on smokers, and people are addicted to nicotine, are you saying now that we have other distribution methods for people to get, we can actually realistically contemplate a ban on cigarettes?
Well, we can eventually phase out cigarettes. I think the combination of giving people an alternative and raising the legal liability on cigarette companies when they continue to sell cigarettes when there's far less hazardous products available. I think we can rapidly achieve the goal of this country to get to 5% smoking rates by 2025. I mean, that's entirely possible if we just have intelligent regulation, as per this report, as what Ash is trying to accomplish in New Zealand. We can do these things. We can have a health breakthrough, and we can set a precedent for the rest of the world.
On the way in, you told me about the impact on the market capitalisation of tobacco companies of vaping. How much less are they worth since vaping arrived on the scene?
Well, about 2.5 years ago, the big tobacco companies that are listed on the FT 500 were worth collectively about $700 billion US. It's now down to about $360 billion. They've lost over $300 billion of market value because of disruptive technology. So the people who think I'm going to attack vaping because I don't like big tobacco totally miss the point. Vaping is a huge threat to the cigarette, which has essentially been a cartel, incredibly profitable. This is a huge challenge to big tobacco. We have the ability, to work with that. So rather than supporting them by taking away their competition, use disruptive technology to get rid of cigarettes.
David Sweanor, thank you so much for coming this morning. It was an absolutely fascinating interview, and we appreciate your time and expertise.
Wonderful to see you.
Thank you so much.